Welcome to the JB Media Digital Drop-In for January 2019. We're really excited to have everybody joining us for our first DDI of the year. This is your lead instructor, Sarah, and I'm sitting here with Justin.
Hey, Sarah. Hey, everyone.
So today we're going to be talking about the top 5 digital marketing trends for 2019. And I was mentioning to some folks as we were getting ready to begin the call that of course there are a ton of trends out there that you could read about. I have spent the last month pretty much reading up on everything I can to find out what the big hype is for 2019. But what I think Justin and I have boiled down for today's call or today's webinar are basically things that I feel are really actionable and can really help you move your digital marketing strategy forward. And at the end, like I mentioned, we'll do a recap of some bigger trends that I think we all need to be paying attention to that are a little bit more higher level and not so actionable, but are something we should all be thinking about. And then for those of you who do want a little bit of information about classes, I will go ahead and share that as well. So during this call, I want to encourage everyone as we talk about these different topics to please go ahead and submit any questions that you have to the chat. I will be monitoring the chat during the call, so please feel free to go ahead and essentially just talk about anything that comes to mind, questions that you have or ideas or concepts that you have or anything that relates to our discussion today. Feel free to chat that in and I'll be keeping track of all those questions. But to start, the first trend we want to discuss for 2019 is basically the increasing price of Facebook ads is leading to the need for the development of more advanced Facebook ad strategies if you really want to see success and return on investment. So I want to give Justin a chance just to kind of talk about this, what he's seeing in the Facebook advertising world. It's definitely getting more competitive out there.
Yeah, and it's more than just competitive. I think it's also Facebook raising their prices in general for a variety of reasons, partially because their costs are going up. We've talked about this before, but they've had to staff up, especially in Europe, but all over for their privacy issues and their compliance with new regulations globally. So that's caused their staff prices to go up, so they've had to raise their prices to keep their profits, not their actual profits are way down, but to keep it, less drastic, but also competition has a big part of it. If you look at how many more small businesses are using Facebook ads, how many more solo entrepreneurs are using them than 2 or 3 years ago, plus how the bigger businesses have shifted more money to remarketing in Facebook and more money to doing more advanced Facebook ads, and seeing increased ROI, people are willing to spend more there, and they're trying to charge more. You're also seeing greater fluctuations in price seasonally, times of year when a lot of people are advertising, their algorithm raises the price to basically as a supply and demand thing. So around the holiday season, around election season, which is every other year in the fall, to a lesser degree in the off years too, but mostly when there's national campaigns or big statewide campaigns happening, which are on the even years, those will raise the prices that time of year. And I would, you see them going down at times of year when there's not as much going on, like the first couple months of the year and the middle of summer. There's not as many shopping holidays or big national things impacting the price. So that is, that's something to consider. But the point of this trend that we wanted to talk about today is that as the prices go up, it used to be so inexpensive that you could afford to just kind of try stuff and afford to just buy new fans through likes campaigns and worry about what you're going to do with them later, and do content marketing where you just boost posts and just because the traffic is cheap and you can get good qualified traffic. But now as the pricing starts to increase, cost of likes increases, the cost of clicks increases, you need to be thinking about being smarter with your budget because it's easier to waste money than it used to be. And it's harder to get the results you want for the same budget. So We had a call, I think it was 1 or 2 months back, with Michelle Porterfield, and I would encourage anyone to go back and rewatch the video or the recording of that, because that was really focused on this specific kind of some strategies for overcoming this, and specifically how to set up goals and use goal-based advertising or using strategies to kind of get towards the bottom of the funnel from the top. So starting with awareness, moving to remarketing, moving to driving traffic to then getting people to buy or convert. And so having a more strategic approach that has the end game in mind but doesn't try to expect people to jump straight through the hoop all the way to the end from the first ad is really important. And that just it means you have to have, sometimes one campaign has multiple types of content, multiple different pieces of creative that are designed to do different things. Get people aware, maybe have them watch a video or go to a landing page, start a process, and then only remarket to people who have done that previous step. And that, in some ways that's a better strategy, but in some ways it also at first might cost you more money because you have to run multiple ads and have to run one ad for long enough to have a big enough audience to do the second ad. So it's not for everyone, but most businesses should be thinking this way.
Mm-hmm. No, I think one of the strongest things that Michelle talked about was really understanding the relationship between creating campaigns that maybe drive awareness and then following that up with a campaign that basically drives the conversion. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just thought that was like a really clear kind of description of how you're moving people through the funnel, and you're not necessarily going to move them through the funnel just with one campaign. Mm-hmm. You actually move them through the funnel through a series of campaigns that target people really specifically. So I definitely would agree. If you want to go back and watch that, for those of you who did not get to see that, definitely check out that recording. But there's a few other things I want to throw in there as far as ad manager features that I think are my top 3 right now that I'm talking to people about to do what Justin's talking about. One is I really want to encourage people, if you didn't take the time to really start to understand split testing, that you do that. Because I feel there's really some time-saving positives to doing the split test. And there's a number of different things you can do with split testing, but for me, where I'm seeing we're learning a lot is just from the creative split test and the audience split test. So we might have 2 audiences that are very similar, but they have a few key differences, and we're able to run an ad and really kind of see right away over the course of the first few weeks, which audience is picking up more or which creative is just getting the better result. And I think that's a key thing to start investigating if you haven't already. The next thing that I think, and this actually comes from the link I share here, Gary Vaynerchuk's most recent article about Facebook ad strategies for 2019, he talks about the importance of using the tool to retarget the most engaged people. Yeah. And he especially pairs this with video advertising. Yeah. So that there's a really strong kind of strategy around, if you're moving into video advertising, running a video to see, how many people will engage with it, and then retargeting the people that engage the most and watched a certain amount of time on that video.
Yeah, that's something that Michelle's, Michelle's now part of our team. She's been doing some project by project work for a long time. Now she's a part-time team member, and one of the things I've seen her do is that, we run a short video explaining a product or service, and then only run remarketing to people who watched a certain part of the video. And so if they know what we're offering, then giving them an offer to try it is going to be more effective than if they never heard of it before and they see an offer to try it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good point, is sometimes when you're offering, discounts or something like that, you want to offer those discounts to people who already have a brand awareness, because they're more likely to actually convert. And then the third thing I think people really need to be thinking about is diversifying not only the channels, but also the ad types. So again, I meet a lot of people where they're kind of really sort of hyper-focused on that boosting a post. as their main way of advertising. And I just think it's worth it to sort of go deeper and look at things like carousel ads and really study up on them, because Facebook provides a lot of information about how these ads function and what they're really good at generating. And so, if you've been using the same type of ad, or you've been you're doing the ad manager and you're just sending everything to every channel, to me, it's like, consider running a specific ad on just Instagram channels.
Yeah.
Consider running, and like really kind of creating more of what we always talk about, which is that campaign mindset around what you want to see happen. Also, you'll notice as we go through this presentation today, I've included links. So as we talk about these trends, you can dig deeper. Once you get the recording and the copy of this download, you'll be able to read a little bit more information about this. The second trend that, again, I'm going to let Justin kind of lead us into is there will continue to be an ongoing struggle to balance content frequency with content quality. And I know that's something your team understands, because it's a big part of what you guys do as a team for clients. So you want to talk a little bit about this and how you see this going into 2019?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you study kind of the research and the findings that are coming out of the SEO world, they're increasingly pointing towards really high quality long form content doing the best for SEO, both for long tail keywords as well as more competitive keywords. And what I mean by long form is upwards of 2,000 words with lots of graphics, maybe video as well, in one piece of content, one single URL. And knowing that doing something like that, even modestly well, probably takes 40 hours of work, or 40 to 60 hours of work between the research, the content development, the graphic design, maybe designing some supplementary piece that can be downloaded so it achieves its overall content marketing strategy. Most organizations, even the bigger ones, can't justify producing more than one of those a month, or maybe even one every quarter or every 6 months. We're targeting doing something like that every 3 to 4 months here at JB Media. But doing one piece of content every 3 to 4 months doesn't feed the social media cycle. It doesn't feed consistent email newsletter content. It doesn't make your site look active. So that's the balancing act. And there's a few different ways to approach it. One is that you can create a series of articles that eventually are combined into something larger, or you can create the long form piece first and break it down into list articles or kind of shorter pieces that you can use in social media to promote the larger piece. We're tending towards that second approach that I mentioned for JB Media. So what we're doing right now, I'm working on a long piece about ethical marketing. I'm going to work on a long piece next. I'm going to expand a previous article that I wrote about partnerships for nonprofits and social impact organizations. And then we're looking at doing some data research right now, some keyword research and some strategy to pick 1 or 2 more topics for later in the year. So I worked a couple hours so far. I'm about 1/4 of the way through my long piece on ethical marketing. Once we do that long piece, we will create 2 to 3 shorter articles, which we'll publish either on our own site, but mostly as guest blogs on other sites to build some links back to the big piece. And then we'll create a downloadable version of the big piece to gather email addresses. And maybe eventually, with a partner, create like a short micro course about that subject matter as well. But that still doesn't feed our ongoing need for social content and our own blog and our own newsletter. So we still have to produce some other content. And when you're just trying to feed social and newsletter, usually SEO is not your number one goal. So the length is not as important. It still has to be quality, but it can be shorter with quality. It can be really great, like a short list article or a trend piece that talks about a recent change that might only take an hour or 2 to write, or a couple, 3 or 4 hours, which is more realistic to do on a weekly basis. Weekly is good to have at least something, once, twice. 2 to 4 times a month is a good pace to have some new content for most businesses. So if you're only doing something big every quarter, you got to do something else in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the things too that's becoming increasingly important for different businesses and organizations is when you're putting together your content strategy, you just basically described, in a more like kind of applicable way of how this works. But I think even when you're strategizing in the beginning of what kind of content you want to be putting out every month, you really need to be thinking in this kind of long form, short form perspective, and really being realistic about what you have as far as resources. What can we do? I've been having this conversation a lot with students about curating versus original content, and I think that's part of this balance as well, right? If you're doing social media as a main focus, it's like what part of the content is original, whether it's visual or written, and what part of the content are you sharing and curating from other places, and how can you keep that in balance? Because it's easy to, end up doing a lot of shared and curated content, but that doesn't really build your brand and sometimes doesn't drive people to the website. So really understanding that each piece of content you're doing, whether it's monthly or quarterly or weekly, it has to have a purpose and it has to be driving people to completing an action or accomplishing a goal, and then really looking at the breakdown of everything, and kind of saying, okay, we can create 4 shorter pieces every month, 1 longer piece every quarter, and then we might do just simple graphics for social media to seed that take a little less kind of writing time. But of course, graphics are going to engage people right within the social media news feed or right within a story instead of, let's say, driving them to the website or a blog or something. So yeah, just that striking that balance, I think, takes a lot more planning now than it used to. And there's not really an easy formula. And so the one article that I wanted to share with everybody is there's an awesome website called articulatemarketing.com. These guys are actually an agency. They write a great blog, and they just wrote an excellent blog post about that, the argument of quantity versus quality. Really, it's quantity plus quality. And they basically boil it down to content marketing is about the right quantity of quality content for your audience. So all content marketing should be good quality. Hashtag make the internet a better place. Okay, so quality shouldn't be sacrificed, I don't think, in any situation, whether it's short or long form, written, video, or graphics. I think we should always try to strive to do the best we can with the quality of our content, but it's really about understanding who you're talking to and what do they need and want, because the content needs to serve them. And so thinking about that and working that into your strategy, especially as you're looking forward to 2019, I think can be really valuable. And even going back and looking at all the content that you did in 2018 and what really produced the bigger wins, whether it's engagement, conversion, website traffic, whatever it is that you are really aiming for, what did you see produced results in 2018? How can you take that knowledge and then build off it in the coming year, I think is really important. So the next trend that we wanted to talk about, trend number 3, is essentially what I call link building ain't easy. Link building is something that I think is an increasingly difficult burden for anybody doing SEO. It feels sort of confusing. There's a lot of different tools out there that make lots of claims, and you have to really kind of dig through to figure out how can I really build quality links that are actually going to improve my website authority if SEO is important. And so a lot of brands are going in 2019, they're going to continue to face this challenge of building authoritative website links. And that means we have to think not just about social sharing, which is an important part of distribution, but other things that will build links. So again, Justin, you want to kind of talk to us about this trend and how you're seeing this play out?
Yeah, this topic is connected to what we'll talk about next month. The topic we've talked about this morning as our topic for February. But what I want to make sure we're clear on what we mean by this second part. What we mean is when first of all, sharing your own content on social media, while it's important, it does have minor ranking signals that it creates for SEO. It's not a replacement for building links. So it's not putting content on social media, even having other people put your content on their social media doesn't count as a link. It counts as a different type of signal. And it's not as important. It doesn't have as long of an impact. And why this is important is because link building is all about partnerships and reciprocation, or at least partnerships and asking other people to link. You only really amazing content that is already showing up somewhere gets organic links. If no one finds your content, no one's gonna link to it, and people only link to amazing content. So if you have content that's like good but not amazing, you have to actively build links to it. But as we build, partnerships and aligned collaborations, it's much easier for someone to say, yeah, we'll share that on our social media, or we'll put that out in our newsletter, because finding a place to link to it on their website is a bigger ask. It's a greater effort on their part. It might require asking someone else to do something, like asking a webmaster or even an outside vendor that does the website, maybe even which might even cost them some money. If it's something you have to make a request of someone to add a link, they might not have a clear place to link, which means creating something new, like a new blog post or a guest post, or even a partner's page or something else somewhere else where it would link. So it's much easier for them to like offer something, to make sure there's a exchange, but say, oh, we'll post it on our Twitter and our Facebook and our LinkedIn group or something like that. And that's helpful, but it's not link building. So what's happened is, as social media has become more and more accepted as in the norm of communication online and accepted as a way to provide a tit for tat, or just simple way to thank someone, or a way to pat them on the back, it has often, in some cases, replaced an actual link, and making link building much more difficult.
Mm-hmm. So just to clarify, for those of you who might be a little newer to this, like Justin said, next digital drop-in in February, on February 6th, we'll talk about website authority, but the amount of links that point to your website are a very important part of establishing website authority.
Yeah, it's one of the most important pieces of authority.
Yeah, especially on the Google search engine. So that's why it becomes so important to kind of think about this if your goals include social media as well as search engine optimization. If you're working on both of those things, understanding the relationship between the two and what is actually building your website authority and what is just building, let's say, what I would call your brand authority, which is where social media can have a huge impact. Those are kind of two different things, and they're related and they work together. But it's just important to think about what Justin just said. There's also a great article that I'm including in here to share with everyone. You'll see this link right here for resource pages and roundup posts. I think it's a lot of actionable information in this article that you can read. But essentially, I think there's three kind of takeaway white hat strategies that we talk about. And again, in SEO, we have white hat and black hat strategies. And as we move forward into the feature, I think white hat strategies are even more dominant than they've ever been. So it's not about tricking the search engines into anything. It's about really building true high quality authoritative links. There's three things I think you can think about in order to kind of increase your ability to get links to your website. One is when you're thinking about creating content. So Justin just talked about long form content that you might only create a few times a year. We also talked about blog posts, which might be shorter and more specific, and you might be creating those even on a weekly basis. Think about evergreen topics. So making sure that you have a mixture of both like sort of time-sensitive topics, which can be really valuable in driving a bunch of interest, especially when the topic is incredibly important. Let's say it's answering a question about something that's really relevant right now. So for instance, we've done a webinar on GDPR. That was something that was really valuable. It's been really important for a few months as it actually got implemented. But on the flip side of those trending topics is actually answering questions where the answer is going to be the same 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And especially when you're doing long form content, thinking about that evergreen value. Because over time, evergreen content can get more links than content that's more related to a time sensitive topic, trend, or nature. And I see this question from Claire: should links be embedded into the copy across multiple pages, Or can you create a list of partners on one page? So Claire, just to be clear, what we're talking about is link building, which means links that point at your website, not the links that you place on your pages, links that go from your website to other places. So does that make sense? When it comes to outgoing links, where your website is directing people to other websites, you can put those links anywhere you want. Yes, you can embed them so that they're keyword phrases, or you can have buttons or things like that. And you can also create different lists on your website that link people over to different things. But really, when we talk about link building, what we're talking about is backlinks. And that means that other websites out on the internet, they link back to your website because a piece of content is incredibly valuable. And when they do that, that is how you build your search engine authority or your website authority. So does that make sense? Does that answer the question? Let me know if it's still not clear. The other thing that you can do is if you have products or services that you know are really valuable and can solve problems for people or answer questions or, whatever it is, do some research about what types of resource pages and roundup blog posts are out there. So these are things what Justin refers to as list articles. They might be best of type of articles. So they're content pieces out there that would basically say, this is the best software for this type of thing, or these are the top 10 products for this particular, to solve this particular problem. Or here is the top 10 companies that do this particular service. And so this article that I'm linking to here gives you some great ways to sort of short research those things on Google and really identify list articles, resource pages on people's websites, as well as roundup blog posts that are kind of talking about your industry and highlighting the best products and services. Because if you can sort of start to make a list of those things, that's where you can start to approach those people and say, hey, we've created a piece of content. We think it's really valuable and relevant to what you're talking about. He even provides some great little sample emails that you would send to the writer or the journalist or whoever has published this. And so definitely think about that, because if you can be included in some of those types of articles or posts, then you will get a lot more links back potentially that are valuable. And Claire, I see your response there, so I'm going to answer that in just a second. And then position your brand to take advantage of PR opportunities. So not every company, especially smaller businesses or nonprofits, can do PR on a regular basis. I realize PR requires really having somebody in charge of that job. Mm-hmm. And they have to have hours every week to focus on it if they're going to do public relations. But one thing you can do is make sure that you're positioned really well, that your website is set up in a way, and that you have kind of a contact person who can handle any types of potential media that would come your way, so that you know how to take advantage of it quickly and you know how to get them everything that they need. So even if you're only going to, hear from maybe a few journalists or go after a few placements when it comes to stories every year, even if it's just 2 or 3, to me, you want to make sure that you have a really good media kit. You want to make sure you have a media contact. And you just want to position yourself so that if PR opportunities come up, you're not scrambling to figure out a way to take advantage of it. And just knowing that when you get coverage, whether it's from a blogger, an influencer, a media person, a journalist, a local chamber, whatever it is, an industry publication, when you get that type of coverage, that you make sure you ask for the link and that you find out what kind of value you're going to get out of having that placement. Because that's just going to allow you, like I said, to take those opportunities quickly, get people what they need really fast, provide photos, logos, things like that, so that you can get listed. And Claire, I see you were saying, yes, you're thinking the list would include partners that have a link back to my website. So you're basically saying, do those partners already link to your website, or would you be building the page that links to them as kind of an incentive to get them to do it back? And while she's answering that, Justin, you do a lot of partnership stuff. So, how do you feel about the viability of creating some sort of partner list and trying to work those partnerships to get the links back and forth?
I think it depends on the business, but it works for most businesses.
Yeah.
Some of the businesses that are the hardest to do partnerships with are like local service businesses. Local professional services can be tough. But most B2C companies can figure out a way to do partnerships. Almost all events can come up with a partnership strategy. Most tourism businesses can have a partnership strategy. Most e-commerce businesses can come up with some sort of partnership strategy as well, or at least an influencer type campaign, which can be similar. And those types of campaigns can include, as part of the trade, content that links back, guest content, or collaborative content. One of my favorites in this area is you create a piece of content that has contribution from multiple partners, and you promise to promote it with some budget, some ad budget, and some to your own lists. In exchange, they offer to either receive guest content from you that talks about it, or they write some guest content on their own site that talks about this collaborative piece. So example could be a guide or a thorough list article that has contributions from experts, and those experts would write a little short post saying like, I'm really excited we contributed this great piece of content, and then link to it. Mm-hmm. So then they're promoting it, but they're also linking to it. And part of the promotion is that they're sharing that with their networks. And there's a link in it to this SEO optimized to link to the page on your site. And that takes some time, to do that, to create those relationships, to come up with a good idea for content, to build it, to design it, to launch it. But those links, if you get 4 or 5 links to a new piece of content that's high quality, it will move up in the search engines way faster than if you just publish it on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. That's a great idea, because I've definitely seen that work in a lot of ways, especially because I read a lot of guides, especially this time of year, about different things. So yeah, hopefully, Claire, that gave you some ideas, because if you already have partners, really you do want to think about how you can maximize those partnerships. And I think just keep in mind, when you're looking at a longer list of partners, identify the partners that have really good, really active websites. Partners just are not always at the same level, right? So I always try to prioritize the partners that I know are putting as much into their digital marketing, their website content, their social media as, the brand that I represent, right? So we want to make sure that we're all going to contribute to the process, and that partners are going to do what they say they're going to do. A lot of times you might approach, 15 partners, but you find that 5 or 6 really rise to the top, and they really understand the value. So you can identify where you should spend your time. So the last few trends I want to talk about, trend number 4 is stories, the future of social media. So this has been a really interesting discussion that I've been following online about essentially the fact that story content is becoming really, really big online. So when we look across Snapchat, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, all of whom use a story style piece of content, they have tools where people can create stories. It's, that content that you have where you can do video and photos, you have stickers, you have emojis, you have all these different things that you can add. Right now, there's about 1 billion accounts that are using stories format every day across those 4 major social media players. And now we know that across those 4 players, we've got more than 1 billion stories being posted every day. So the discussion that's happening in the social media world is news feeds are getting less popular and stories are getting more popular. And a lot of people that use social media are starting to feel like news feeds are full of junk and clutter, and stories is kind of a way to experience social media without all that junk and clutter right now. So this is just, I think, a huge thing to be paying attention to as we go into 2019. So on Instagram, more than 400 million people use stories every day. That is a big number of their overall membership, right? That's, getting up to like 35-40% there. So I think if you're not using story content, if you haven't explored how you would create story content as a brand, this is something you want to start paying attention to in 2019. I thought it was interesting that at the F8 2018 conference, Chris Cox, who's Facebook's chief product officer, he said the stories format is on a path to surpass feeds as the primary way people share things with their friends sometime next year. So that's 2019.
Yeah.
That means in 2019, we're going to see that the stories format potentially starts to surpass people's engagement with the newsfeed. And Mark Zuckerberg even added that it looks like stories will be a bigger medium than the newsfeed has been. So I just think, a lot of us, we focus a lot on that newsfeed, and that makes total sense right now. I think we need to continue putting great content into social media newsfeeds. But I think we need to start thinking about how stories can be more incorporated, how it, like I said, how it plays out for our brand. We need to start generating ideas. One of the first steps you can take is look for a competitor or somebody else in your industry that's doing stories regularly, and start paying attention to how people are using it, especially if they've got a pretty big following and there's some positive energy happening on their account. So one thing that I think is super powerful about this whole discussion is the idea that the future of social media will no longer be about sharing only perfect moments. So one of the things that stories is generating from people, the reason it's generating engagement and people are enjoying it is because they're more authentic in some ways, right? So a lot of stories that are out there are people in the moment sharing things. And even in Asheville, which is a small city, there are a ton of professionals using Instagram and Facebook stories now to promote themselves and to create deeper personal connections with people. So Buffer wrote a great article about this called "The News Feed is Outdated." And in that article, they say it'll no longer be about retweets and how many people like your content. It's about going deep and not wide. How many people are tuning into your stories each day? How many people share your content directly with their friends and their close-knit groups? And how we use storytelling to create empathy through shared experiences. So this is an interesting topic because it means digital marketing is going to get less formulaic, right? And that's been happening my entire career. So digital marketing just in my career has become so much less formulaic than it was 10 years ago. It used to be that you could apply the same strategies to lots of different businesses and you'd get results, and we're really not seeing that anymore. But the flip side to that, I think, is that we're being challenged to create content that has deeper personal connection to people and actually provides real value. So this is just a natural response and a natural discussion that I think has to happen in a world where Americans, depending on the study, get somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 marketing messages a day. So when we're receiving all that information, how are we supposed to deal with it? We end up wanting to filter out the junk and just go to what matters most. And I see this comment from Melissa. Do you all think that the stories do better with the brand person? I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I understand the question. Do you think the stories do better with the brand person in the video? Yeah, so I think one of the things that stories is really bringing to the table is, like I said, this more personal kind of reflection of brands. So whether you're a one-person company or you're a larger company with multiple people, you've usually got one person or multiple people that are really involved, not just in video, but I think in the whole story experience, right? So it's people having fun, it's people being silly, it's something that enhances the brand personality. There's a lot of stories out there that speak to values and speak to belief systems, right? So you start to learn more about a business or an organization, not just about what they do and what their products and services are, but you start to learn like who's behind the curtain, and what are these people about? What do they care about? What gets them excited? So I think this is directly related in a lot of ways to culture, right? To companies and organizations having more culture. Yeah, and no, I agree, Alyssa. Like I said, it means things are less formulaic and we've got to get more creative when it comes to our marketing if we're going to use stories. We have to be willing to be more personal and have, like I said, a deeper investment in what we're doing. But at the same time, I think it makes people feel different when they can see where their money goes and who it benefits and the types of people that they're supporting every time they spend. So in a world where I can spend anywhere at any time, right, it becomes even more important to me that when I spend those dollars, I feel like it's contributing to something that I align with, that I agree with, that I believe in. And I think, we associate this a lot with younger markets, but I actually think it's true of all markets at this point, right? People have so many choices. We don't always just look for the cheapest thing anymore because there's a bunch of places to get the cheap price. And we don't just look for the highest quality thing. There's a bunch of places that have high quality products and services. So from there, our decisions get made based on the connection we feel to the brand. So as much as I think it causes more thought and more effort, I also think it enhances all of our experience as consumers. So trend 5, the last trend I want to talk about is redefining the marketing funnel. So this is something that if you are a student of the JB Media Institute, then we've had a lot of conversations about this. We've talked a lot about the customer journey, and that really, the customer journey used to be more of what they called the sales funnel. And now we understand that the customer journey is more of a circle. And so people don't start with a lot of options and just whittle it down to their final choice. There's actually kind of a circular journey that they take where they learn about more options, less options, they read reviews, and they kind of expand and contract their options before they make their final decision. And thinkwithgoogle.com has done a great sort of study and follow-up on this that I read in the last week that was just really powerful. And one of the things that they said was today, people are no longer following a linear path from awareness to consideration to purchase. They are narrowing and broadening their consideration set in unique and unpredictable moments. People turn to their devices to get immediate answers, and every time they do, they're expressing intent and reshaping the traditional marketing funnel along the way. I just felt like this is probably one of the most powerful statements that I personally have read over the last year about how the customer journey is becoming this very organic and very personalized experience for people. So again, we're moving away from the formulas where we see that everybody has the same behavior or very similar behavior when they're making purchases. And we're finding that individual people, because of the sheer amount of options that they have and their ability to access those options at any time, that is creating a world in which each individual person's customer journey in a lot of ways is unique. And that customer journey literally is organic and it evolves as they do different things on the internet. So as I talk to my friends and ask them for recommendations on Facebook, my customer journey shifts. And as I use my phone and search for different things, comparatively to using my computer, the actual results I may get in the search engine are different. And so that journey evolves as I'm doing those searches and as I'm intentionally looking for different things. And so this is just something that I think we really have to start thinking about. I still think the funnel model really matters when we're talking directly about sales and the process of conversion. Because then in a lot of ways, yes, if you're running a campaign, there's kind of a way that you want to funnel them through that campaign to take the desired action. So that's where that funnel model still works. But when we're thinking about our audiences in general, and especially our individual customers and their behavior, we have to start to realize that they're not as predictable as they used to be because of the sheer amount of variables involved in their customer journey. So this is where I think we're going to see in 2019 a continued move for tracking and reporting to become more advanced.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you that have, because I know there's a lot of students that we work with who avoid tracking and reporting because it seems stressful and it's data. We're reaching a point where as businesses and organizations, we cannot continue to skimp on that level.
And that really goes back to the Facebook sophistication because it's driving that side. It's driving where you put your content marketing time. Everything is data driven these days.
Yeah, so really having things set up, even like Michelle talked about with Facebook advertising, making sure that you have conversion tracking set up if you've got actions on your website, advancing your Google Analytics on your website to make sure that you're tracking the right types of e-commerce sales or conversions like downloads and signups. I just think we're going to see that stuff gets more and more important because the customer journey is becoming more and more unique for each individual person. And so we need to be able to track those things and see trends within our own customer journey. So the last few things that I wanted to mention, and I've just added this so that you can dig into these, some other important trends that I've been reading about over the last month. One is micro-influencers. So it's not just about having 1 million followers. Micro influencers are influencers that have 10,000 or less. And there's a lot of power there. So if you click on these links I've included, you can read about these trends. Chatbots, which is something we're going to be talking about more in 2019, especially in the Institute classroom. But really understanding that a lot of businesses now, we see that in the next 5 years, a lot of their communications are going to be done via chatbots. This is a form of artificial intelligence that is really taking on a big role simply because the management of customer communications is pretty overwhelming for a lot of businesses. And how can they, take commonly asked questions, things that people do on a regular basis, and make it more automated?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see this really grow, and especially because messaging apps are really, really powerful and popular right now. So Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, these type of applications, a lot of people are using them in all age groups. Voice search, of course, which we've talked about before, is going to continue to be a discussion, especially in the SEO world, because by 2020, they're estimating that about 30% of web browsing will be done without touching a screen, right? So it will be voice activated. So I think in 2019, we're going to see that evolve. And then, of course, like I said, related to chatbots is just messaging. So applications like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, Instagram, and Twitter, which are all totaling about 5 billion monthly users, we really see that messaging individually and personally, not just between people, but between brands and people, is having a bigger role. And I believe I read recently that Facebook's going to be launching even some more additional sort of advertising options within Messenger. And I think that is a direct reflection of the fact that messaging has become such a big part of people's lives. It's how they're living their lives. So I think we're going to have to pay attention to this as marketers. And I thought it was interesting. There's a couple great studies if you click into these links, but one found that 69% of the people that were polled said directly messaging a company gives them more confidence in the brand.
If they respond.
Yes,
With a real
if they
message.
respond, exactly. So if they feel like their questions get answered and it's timely, even if you're using a chatbot, that type of relationship, again, makes things more personalized. And so I see, Elisa, humans seem to hate talking on the phone, but we want an answer right away. I literally had that conversation in my AB Tech class last night, and you're absolutely right, especially the younger generations. They feel like talking on the phone is kind of disruptive, and you have to be really invested to get on the phone. And I find myself, as somebody in the technical field, I chat all the time. Like, especially when I'm working on websites with hosting companies and things like that. I don't want to call and listen to that bad elevator music and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to hop on the chat, figure out what's wrong, and then move on.
I have a good example of that. We're almost out of time, but I was trying to find a chiropractor. I actually have my appointment in like an hour and a half from now. And I had this one referral that all I had for them was a phone number. And I had called and left 2 voicemails, and I hadn't been able to connect with anybody. And it had been weeks. And my wife was like, you really need to get that appointment scheduled, so why don't you try someone else? And she's like, here's 2 more for referrals from friends. And so I went to both websites. One had a contact form, which I filled out, and the other had a scheduling app where I could actually schedule my first appointment without even contacting them. So I messaged the first one, and then went to the second website, read the bio, read her expertise, said this sounds like a good fit. The other one probably might have been even a slightly better fit, the first one. But the other one seemed good enough, and I could schedule an appointment on her website. So I did that. And then the other one wrote me back like a couple hours later, and I was like, I'm still deciding on my options, like check in with me next week. I think I'm going to go with someone else. Because I already had booked an appointment.
Yeah.
So that appointment's today. If I feel good about it, I'm going to try this person for a little while. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to the second choice. But the first person never called me back.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm not even considering them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think, Elisa, you made such a good, I love that statement. Humans seem to hate talking on the phone, but we want an answer right away. I mean, I think you just nailed it. That's where a lot of people are coming from. So if there's any other questions, feel free to type them in, but I want to wrap up our call today so we can all get back to work. For those of you who are interested, we have a lot of new class offerings that basically started this week. So if you're interested in writing a digital marketing plan, you want to learn more about SEO, social media, public relations, and online advertising, as well as strategic marketing approaches, we have a class that starts this week. It's our core full program. You basically commit to a 3-month subscription, and then after that you can cancel or stay subscribed. We have another cohort that starts in February, on February 18th. So if you would like to kick off your year by really putting together your digital marketing plan and you want the support of the JB Media team, you can reach out to Jenna. Her email is on the screen. You can also reach out to me. My email is the same as Jenna's, just Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at the beginning. And then we also have 2 intro courses that you might want to consider. First is the Intro to Content Marketing. This covers a lot of subjects, including advertising, SEO, and social media. And it's just simply $79 per month. You sign up, join the program, and then you complete all of the content in your own time. And you get support on our classroom from Jenna and I, as well as Justin. And for those of you who are in the tourism industry, we also have our Intro to Tourism and Local Marketing course. $79 a month as well. You can take as many months as you'd like to complete the content. Both of these courses come with a lot of ebooks, video classes, how-to materials, and lots of different things, not only created by myself and Justin, but also with great contributions from his agency team, who have put together lots of information to help people move their strategy forward in 2019. So when you get a copy of this PDF, you can click on any of these links and simply join those courses right away. And again, you can reach out to Jenna if you'd like more information about our full program. The full program, I think you definitely need to have at least 1 full day a week that you're going to spend on learning, because you're really going to be writing your plan during those first 3 months. And so it's a little bit more intensive. But please feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Thank you all so much for joining us for our first digital drop-in of the year. And I hope you'll join us on February 6th for our digital drop-in on how to quantify your website authority.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to talking to you again next month, and hopefully if any of these programs make sense, please let us know.